know some scientists. So tonight we're going to be talking about adaptations. And adaptations are something that animals inherit that helps them survive. So let's go ahead and get started. You want to make sure you have your journal. You will be on page 148. You need the handout that I gave out in class today. And don't forget that it's not just the front that you need to fill out, but also you have to open it up and fill out what's on the inside. So as the PowerPoint goes along, you'll fill out the front. When we talk about behavioral adaptations, when we start talking about structural adaptations, you'll want to open your journal page up. So let's learn about adaptations. Okay, so first of all, an adaptation is an inherited characteristic that helps an organism to survive in its environment. Okay, so there's a couple of key words there. It's inherited. It is something that they are born with, and it is something that helps them to survive. Okay, we have two types of adaptations. We have behavioral adaptations and structural adaptations. So a behavior is something that they do. Okay, so whether it's migrating or hibernating, whereas a structure is, a physical characteristic like their feet or their beak or their wings. Okay, so we're going to start talking about behavioral adaptation. There are many types of behavioral adaptations. Tonight we're going to talk about three: migration, hibernation, and dormancy. So make sure you write down the definition of each as we go. So migration, you guys are pretty familiar with this. All migration is animals moving from one area to another area. They typically do this. It's a seasonal thing. A lot of times birds fly south for the winter. There are some species of butterflies that will even migrate as well. But that is something they are already born knowing how to do. And it helps them to survive because they can't survive necessarily in a very cold environment. They're not built that way. So their adaptation is to move someplace where it is warmer. So that is migration. Another behavioral adaptation is called hibernation. And we are most familiar with this with bears. And hibernation is a deep, inactive sleep during the winter. They save energy. Their body is at a resting state. And that is what hibernation is. And it usually happens during the winter. But remember, our land snails also like to hibernate. And part of it is also a protective instinct for our snails. So we've talked about migration, we've talked about hibernation, and the last behavioral adaptation we're going to talk about is what we call dormancy. And that is a behavioral adaptation of plants. And we see this all the time every winter. All the plants don't have leaves. That's actually called dormancy, and it's an inactive state in the plants during the winter that helps them to survive. All right, so now let's talk about what we call structural adaptations. And a structure is just a part of your body. It's a body part. Your hands are a structure. Your fingers are a structure. Your nose is a structure. Okay? Your eyes, your legs, your feet, your toes. Okay? Those are all structures. And they are sometimes what we call physical adaptations because they're a physical part of your body. And like I said, they are body parts that help an organism to survive. They serve a function or a purpose. So every structure has a function. Okay, like our hands are the structure. The function is to help us pick things up, like my coffee. And different organisms, different animals, different plants are going to have different structures that are going to serve a different function or purpose to help them to survive in their environment. Like we have opposable thumbs. Okay, we have these opposable thumbs that allow us to help us pick up things, to grip pens and pencils, to write. If we took our thumbs away, if I came around and I taped your thumb, it would be a lot harder to pick things up. So that's an adaptation that we have that helps us to do a lot of the things we do every single day. So let's learn about some animal adaptations. The first one is fins. So not most, but a lot of aquatic animals do have fins, like fish and dolphins and sharks and whales. And the structure would be the fins. The function and purpose would be to help them move and swim. Okay, so that is one structural adaptation. Another structural adaptation that a lot of animals have are sharp teeth, and then other animals have sharp claws. Sometimes they have both, and that would be the structure. The function is to help them to catch their prey. So you can see we've got a few organisms here, the alligator, the tiger, the shark. They've got these giant teeth. Those teeth help them to dig into their prey and chew it up. If they had teeth like, say, a rabbit, would they be able to be as effective in catching their prey? No. So the shape of their teeth are adapted to allow them to catch their prey. That's why those big organisms that have those big teeth are carnivores, because their teeth allow them to dig in to those bigger animals, whereas something like a rabbit or a mouse, they don't have those big sharp teeth, so they can't dig in to prey that big. So that's why a lot of them are the herbivores, because their teeth are adapted to eat things like plants as opposed to other animals. And then you'll see down here we've got some different shaped claws. Okay, and so a lot of birds have different shaped claws, and these different shaped claws help them to help them to do different these different types of claws determine what kind of prey they are going to be able to catch. You'll notice some are sharper than others. Some have a different shape than others. The one that I circled allows it to just kind of like scoop it up like this. But the purpose of the structures of teeth and claws would be to help them catch their prey. Okay, another one that's pretty cool is camouflage. And we know that camouflage helps them hide from their prey and their predators. So it can work both ways. So a lot of organisms will camouflage to protect themselves from being hunted and eaten, but then also the predators will sometimes camouflage themselves so that the prey doesn't see them right away. And so if the organism is camouflaged and they're blending in with their environment and their prey comes along, the prey doesn't see them, so that predator, that camouflaged predator, can pounce on its prey. So it works both ways. Camouflage can help them prevent being hunted, and camouflage can also help them when they are doing the hunting. And our next one are bird beaks. And so bird beaks help them catch their prey. So the structure would be the shape of the beak, and the function would be to catch their prey. And you'll notice all of these birds have different types of beaks, and that's going to determine what they eat. So a lot of the birds with those pointy noses, like woodpeckers, that allows them to, knock and break through that wood. But then you see like the pelican and the spoonbill, they like to chill out on rocks in the water, and their beak is adapted to help them scoop up those fish. So it just depends on the bird, but different bird beaks have a different purpose, but it's all to help them catch their prey. It's just a different type of prey. And then the next one is thorns or spines. Okay, so plants. So we sometimes forget about plants when we think of organisms, but plants also have adaptations. Cacti in a desert have all these spines on them, and one of the purposes of the spines is to prevent animals from eating them and getting the water out of them, because in the desert, remember, it's hot, so a lot of plants and animals have to adapt in order to survive in an extremely hot environment. And one way that plants like cacti do that is they've got these thorns that if a predator comes up and they get pricked, they're most likely going to go away. So it prevents more organisms from actually eating them and taking away their water supply. And then roses have thorns as well, if you've ever touched a rose bush, and that as well, it helps to prevent animals from eating them. Okay, so there are way more adaptations than the ones that we talked about, and over the next couple of days we're going to be looking at more and more and seeing how these structures and behaviors help them to survive in their environment. The main thing you need to know right now is that adaptations help organisms survive in their environment. They can be structural or behavioral, and that every structure has a function. So you might want to relook over the examples that you were given tonight and come to school tomorrow prepared and ready to talk about animal and plant adaptations.